And welcome to Salon Talks. I'm Dean Obeidallah, and very happy to be here. Today is my first time hosting on Salon Talks, and I can't think of a better guest than Alexandra Pelosi, award-winning filmmaker, you know, from Journeys with George, and her brand new documentary on HBO next week, Outside the Bubble, On the Road with Alexandra Pelosi. Alexandra, welcome to Salon Talks.
Thank you. Why do you think I'd be the perfect first guest?
Because I made a documentary. I made one. And
how'd it go?
Well, it's called The Muslims Are Coming. We went down south and talked to people. And you did the same thing on this one, and also another documentary that you're interested in what people say, and that's what I like. Also, you're political and progressive.
Am I progressive? I don't know about
You know
the word
what, I think
progressive. The word progressive, I'm not a card-carrying member of any party. Okay. So I don't want you to call me anything.
But I don't think Democrat and progressive are always the same. I'm a progressive first and a Democrat second. So
what is a progressive?
Someone who's liberal on issues, who fights for people, who are compassionate and empathetic, who thinks government can help you. It's not the enemy, but someone can actually help people in need. It's a safety net for those people who are struggling.
That was very well put.
That's how I think.
I would join your party. Whatever party you're joining.
The Dean Obeidallah party. Let's talk about, quick thing about your documentary. You go outside the bubble. The question is, why? I love the bubble. It's warm. It's safe. Trump is aging me. Look at me. I'm 23. Look what he's done to me.
I haven't slept in months.
Exactly. Why was it your idea to say, let's go outside the bubble and talk to Trump supporters around the country?
Okay, but here's the thing.
Go ahead.
I'm an old lady. I'm much older than you.
No,
okay?
I don't.
And I have kids in middle school.
Okay.
And they were born and bred in Greenwich Village, which is just, they come home from school and they recite this liberal ideology. They're like brainwashed in a cult of liberal,
okay,
which is fine. I'm from San Francisco and I've spent my entire life in Manhattan and I'm almost 50. So I've spent my entire life in this little blue bubble,
okay,
right? So, but I didn't want my kids to think that this is the only America. They would say these things to me, especially since Trump became president, and I think this is dangerous because they think this is America. Manhattan is not America. And so they needed to be exposed to more than just what I preach at home, right? I sit and I yell at my NPR. That's how liberal I am, right? That's not liberal enough for me. So, but I want them to be, exposed. It's about exposing. It's like vaccinating. You got to expose them to stuff. So I decided that I was going to take them for spring break to the wall to meet people. Let's go to some rallies, meet some people that love Trump, find out why they love this wall. Because that was your idea of spring break for your kids.
You think that's
so?
I think it's very interesting for you as a mom. The spring break is not about having fun, let's say. It's about exposing your kids to something they don't know, which actually is great. With my family, it was like we go to JerseyOre. I'm from New York. I'm from Jersey.
That's real America. See, that's a good real America.
Manhattan's real America. I don't believe America's not. Manhattan's real America too.
They go on vacation to Europe. Most people I know go to Europe for vacation.
I go to Jersey Shore.
Okay, and that makes you, I like that about you, but I have a European husband. So we're allowed to go to Europe because my kids have European passports. But my point is, I don't think that New Yorkers should be spending so much time in Europe. I think they should spend more time getting to know America. Because I feel like if you live in Manhattan and you read the New Yorker and you go to dinner parties and you all read from the same liberal Bibles, and you're all repeating your cocktail parties, the same liberal chatter, are you really educated or are you just spending too much time at the Strand? And you just know, I could tell you what every single one of my friends is thinking. All right? And it's not interesting to me.
It might not be right, though. But, okay, so
I took my kids to Trump rallies.
You took
Trump
rallies.
Because I thought it was important for them to see the other America.
And you met near the end of the film. Something happened near the end of your film. There was a line said there that stayed with me for days. And they were about the meeting with the kids. But before that, there was a Trump activist with a MAGA hat, the whole thing. And he said, we are in a cultural civil war. And then he added, the next step will be bloodshed. And I thought about that. And then I saw a report of George Soros getting explosive device. And then today, right before we started, explosive devices sent to Hillary Clinton. And another one sent to Barack Obama. And, for this, it's not just a conversation academically. Your mom would be on this list. This could affect your family. When you hear about a guy saying, the next step will be bloodshed, is it just hyperbolic? Or do you think we're really heading to that now? We're that hyper, and you were just out there. Was it just one guy saying that? Or
You're totally undermining my narrative today.
Why?
Because when I woke up this morning, I came here to tell you that there's much more purple in this country than you think.
No, there
now
is.
we hear fire hydrant sirens going behind us, and you're like, uh-oh, we're having a civil war.
No, but there is.
Listen, you can hear the sirens.
Right.
Right? So, we are in the center of it. this is ground zero. It's all
But no,
exploding in my face.
But do you have
engineered that just to undermine my narrative.
No,
what
your
I
narrative is
wanted
still
to
true.
say was, in America, it's hard to scream over the emergency crews out front. But my point was, if you go out into what Sarah Palin called real America, you'll find a lot more rational purple people that aren't so red versus blue. Cable news makes a lot of money off of exploiting this divide. It's good business for them to tell us we're divided, there's a civil war coming. And yes, it's in my documentary, I talk about the Civil War.
Sure.
But I also say they all invited me to dinner. It's true that we are
and they
us
knew you were
versus
Pelosi?
them. Yeah, it's us versus them, and it's very tribal, yes. But if you go and you spend a week in Port Arthur, Texas, they all invite you to dinner and they'll invite you to stay the night and they realize you're not the devil. But they've never met a Pelosi before in Port Arthur, Texas. So maybe it's a novelty. Maybe they actually like you after having dinner with you and they invite you to spend the night. So I found that people were much more rational and nicer than I thought they were going to be when I went out there, and that they were so neglected, ignored, discarded by the liberal media. I understood why they hated the media so much. I spent 10 years as a journalist at NBC News.
No.
I am a recovering journalist. So I say this in love, but journalism is not doing a service to this country.
And that's a conversation we can have, and I probably would agree with you a lot on a lot of things. But we do live, I do not paint all Trump supporters by the same brush at all, and I say that sincerely. And I've talked to many, and some are reasonable on certain issues. You actually find common ground on certain issues, like get big money out of politics. You'd be amazed how many Trump supporters are on board with getting rid of Citizens United and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, as we sit here right now, there were bombs sent to leading Democrats. And we can't ignore that reality. And I'm not going to say Donald Trump is the one through his nationalist talk has caused it. But some of the people you met on the road seem reasonable, but at the same time, one guy said the next step will be bloodshed, and we seem to be at the precipice of that, and I'm concerned about that. So when you went around the country, was that guy an outlier, or did you get the sense there was violence right beneath the surface wherever you went through the red states?
Well, we got to be fair. Who shot at the congressman on that field that day? That was a lefty.
No, I agree with you.
Both sides.
No,
it comes from both sides, because if I go out and say, I'm really concerned that Trump's base is coming after us, then we're going to be accused of trying to incite some sort of civil war. On their side, it's on both sides. We have to man up to that. Our liberal friends and, whatever you want to call them, they are...
At the same time, the leader of the Democratic Party, we don't really have one per se, but people like, let's say, Nancy Pelosi has denounced Antifa and denounced any kind of violence. That while you have a person like Donald Trump, who at his rallies has literally called for violence. So, there's a... Let's go back to your documentary, because I think it's instructive.
That's a great idea. Because
outside the bubble, it premieres next Monday on HBO. I just interviewed, you went to West Virginia, and I was so intrigued by that. I just interviewed a Democratic candidate for Congress in West Virginia who made a point I never heard. I don't think progressives heard, but you did in your film as well. To them, coal mining is not just a job, it's a sense of pride. That they gave something for generations and sacrificed their lives to give the rest of the country energy, and that the left was dismissive and seemed to want to shut them down, while Donald Trump actually spoke to them. Do you think progressives have to understand that for certain things like coal mining and factory jobs, it's not quickly just give them another job, another field. To them, it's much deeper. It is about their self-worth.
And that leads beautifully into climate change. So I have these two kids in middle school. They go to the UN school, so they were at the signing of the Paris climate agreements.
Wow.
They were crying the day Donald Trump said that he was going to pull out. But so I would say, living on an island, climate change, I'm very scared about climate change. This island we're on right now could be underwater in the near future. If you read that UN report about, we don't have many good years left on this island.
I didn't read that. Right.
Okay?
Yeah, 12 years and we're gone.
So, 12 years left and we're gone.
Done.
So, but then you go to Port Arthur, Texas, where they lost everything in Hurricane Harvey, right? But then the Democratic mayor says, look, we don't have jobs. We don't have food to feed our families tonight. So I may say climate change is the most important issue. It's very easy to sit in your liberal bubble and say climate change is the most important issue. But if you don't have a job and you don't have food to feed your family tonight in Port Arthur, Texas, you're not buying that. That's something that every liberal candidate for president 2020 should not get on their soapbox and say from the coast, because they're ignoring the people who need a job and need to feed their families. I mean, in every issue, it all comes back to, I need to feed my family tonight.
Sure.
I need to feed my family tonight. And we don't see that because we're perfectly employed. And when we see a caravan coming, when I see a caravan coming, I'm jumping to the next issue. When you see a caravan coming,
right?
You as the liberal, you're thinking, I have no problem with that woman or children coming. She's not coming to steal the job of an HBO documentary filmmaker. But every single person that's in my film sees that caravan and says, I make $7.50 an hour. That caravan is coming for my job. And I'm afraid, and fear equals go right.
Sure. No.
Go right.
But let's
and
go.
So that's why I don't buy your blue wave narrative. I didn't
bring up the blue wave narrative. Where did I?
I'm just saying, I'm so sick
I
and
didn't mention
tired
the
of
blue wave
this
narrative,
blue wave narrative.
but I do think
if I hear one more
be a
time
success.
about this blue wave narrative, I'm
no, let's go back to climate change. Something happened in your film. The mayor made a good point, and that was a very practical point, that if people are struggling to put food on the table, I think he literally said, we don't have time to think about climate change. Right. The woman, though, who stood in front of the fossil fuel plant with you and said, I don't smell anything in the air, and this is not destroying the environment, that kind of stuff. How do you not get so infuriated? Because she literally was dismissing science, and she's not a scientist. She's not coming from it at a place of knowledge. She's coming from at a place where she's literally repeating talking points given to her from the right, which are not helpful for her children, her family. She's living under the destruction of the hurricane, which is more intense because of this very climate change she's denying. Is there any chance to reach some? Just forget it.
Well, I'm not making any judgments. I'm just saying this is how they see the world. And it's important for us to understand how they see the world compared to how we see it. Look, I understand that I was indoctrinated into a liberal cult at birth. I was handed, this is who I am. I understand that. And this is who she is. And never the twain shall meet. And that's just something we have to accept. And we have to accept that we share a country.
Sure.
And we know that we are one country, and we just have to accept that there are different kinds of people in our country. Not everyone's going to think like we do, and we can't ask them to think like we do. We have to listen to them, understand where they're coming from, and there may be more of them than there are of you.
There might be, and I don't care if they have their own personal views on an issue that's not going to affect the rest of us. For example, climate change, by denying it and allowing their politicians to get away with it, then they're not fighting for changes to regulations to make the planet and our nation safer for everyone. If they want to say, I should have a gun, and I'm going to keep a gun in my house, and I don't want to have safe storage laws, they can debate that all day. Whatever, we can talk about that. But this is planetary, this is global, and this is also their community. So I think we have to make, I'm hoping there was a way you're going to say, here's a way to try to reach some of them on an issue like climate change, which is one of the top issues confronting us. And that UN report was a wake-up call for anyone who cares about their children or grandchildren living in an environment that's not deadly and dangerous to them.
But I'm not a proselytizer. I wasn't there to convert them to the liberal cause.
But do you think
I was just as a documentary filmmaker trying to show you their perspective. Someone with much better credentials needs to go in and try and convince them of that. I don't know, send your...
who do I have?
John Kerry? I don't know. Who do you got?
This is just, okay.
Who do you got?
Let's talk.
And Trump's going to be reelected in 2020, mark my words, because who do you got running against him?
There's 20 people running. We're going to have everyone running.
Yes, but name one, like Elizabeth Warren, she got knocked out in the first round. She couldn't even hold her own in round one against Donald Trump.
You're telling us right here,
yes,
Alexandra Pelosi, that Donald Trump's going to be reelected in 2020.
Yes.
You don't even know who the Democratic candidates are. We're going to have Cory Booker, you're going to have
Who
Liz Warren,
else is
Kamala
there?
Harris.
Who else is there? Okay.
You've got Tom Steyer, you've got Joe
Good luck with
Biden.
that.
You
Good
have a
luck with
list
that.
of candidates. Joe Kennedy, maybe Beto
Good
O'Rourke.
luck with
What's
that.
wrong with these candidates?
Good luck with that.
You were just out there. Okay, you were just out there in the heartland.
Unless they learn to speak the way you want them to speak. They've got to learn the language.
Let me be honest.
They can't go to the left.
Why is progressive should I care about their views? Why does it? Because they don't care about. But they don't care about our views. Like they don't care. Like this is the big thing. They had their views, and I got a sense of victimhood still today. You did a documentary years ago, and you covered people going to Sarah Palin rally.
You watched that? Did you really watch that?
So yeah. So
God, finally I found you.
Obama's the Antichrist and all that stuff, right? And at the time, they didn't control the media. They didn't control Congress. They didn't control the White House. So they felt marginalized. Now, flash forward, they control the House, the Senate, the presidency, 32 governorships, 2/3 of state legislature, and they're saying the same things. So the question is, what do they want from me and other progressives? They want us to be silent and surrender and sit in the corner while they impose a right-wing agenda? Because anything else is victimhood. And what do we do about that?
I'm so glad that you watched Right America Feeling Wrong, because I feel like I deserve credit for finding the Tea Party movement. I mean, meaning I didn't invent the internet. I didn't find it. I didn't invent the Tea Party movement. That's not even like I invented the internet. What I meant was I made a documentary about the Tea Party movement before it was called the Tea Party movement. And the reason why that was important was because it shows how divided America was over Obama. And so when people say, oh, we're having a civil war, yeah, they felt that way when Obama got elected. In 2008, they were bitter about the fact that they thought he was Satan and he was the Antichrist and all that. And we weren't crying about it because we loved our beloved Obama, right?
Right.
And so now, oh my God, no one in our liberal bubble can stomach everyone cries themselves to sleep at night because Donald Trump is president. But when Obama got elected, they were...
But they have the same grievance mentality, the same victimhood today when they're completely in power. They control just about everything that they had then. So what do they want? We so much is like, we're liberals, we should do this to reach out to them. They don't reach out to us. They demonize us and forget. I don't know what they want from us. I don't know what I can give them. I have nothing in common with them culturally. I mean, morally, ethically. Their worldview is so vastly different on a fundamental view of America, an America that's pluralistic and tolerant, that's going to accept people like my dad was an immigrant. My grandparents came from Sicily. I don't know if they'd want them there. My Palestinian father, of course they don't want him here. What do I have in common? We both hate the Red Sox. I mean, I hate the Red Sox. But like, what do we have? Like, where do we find common ground when fundamentally my view of this nation and what it should stand for is so vastly different than theirs? I don't know what to do. I don't know how you find common ground. You were out there. Is there any hint you can give me as a real progressive who would like to find common ground with some people, but others I'm just not going to reach, I'm not going to try?
I have failed you.
No, you haven't failed me.
Sorry.
You were out there. No, what did you went out, you did an experiment. A documentary, to me, is you went out there as an experiment. You didn't know what you're going to find. You talked to amazing people from Charlottesville to West Virginia to Texas. Anything you can give us as progressives that we can keep our values and still reach out to them.
I got nothing.
Nothing?
Okay, check please, we're done here.
All right, then let's talk about Charlottesville.
Sorry.
So, no, I watched it.
Okay, Charlottesville. Let's go to Charlottesville. That's a good example.
And I was just there before.
See, for me, it's all about the media narratives. For me, it's all about deconstructing the narrative that, okay, neo-Nazis marching in the streets, right? That's a very popular, there are neo-Nazis marching in the streets. I understand this is the history of America. We have scars, we have wounds.
Sure.
There's a lot of racism in this country. There are a lot of awful, terrible people in this country. Let's not deny that and the history of racism in America. However, they pulled off a coup. They marched in the streets. They got some good coverage once. They never pulled it off again. Mm-hmm. And so to use that image and say they're Nazis marching in the streets in America, okay, once they got away with it in a small college town, great. I feel like they got way more coverage than they deserved because I feel like it was a fringy group of losers who, now you can say they're white supremacists because Southern Poverty Law Center would freak out and say, you don't understand how much racism there is and you can't, belittle how dark yeah, I get it. But you can't paint every person that thinks we should take down a Robert E. Lee statue as a redneck racist. And the mistake you on the left make is that you say, that statue is offensive, tear it down. They do it here in Columbus Circle.
Sure.
That Christopher Columbus is offensive, tear it down. This tear it down culture of I'm offended by that, we have to tear it down, is not constructive. That's not a
And why is it not constructive?
Because maybe you put up a plaque and contextualize it.
I have no problem contextualizing it, and that's the thing. And I've talked, a friend of mine's a state representative, the House of Delegates in Virginia, and he's a liberal guy, and he has no problem with the statutes in a way as long as they're contextualized. He said, you don't get it. It's not liberal versus conservative here in Virginia. It's actually different, and I learned a little nuance from that. But obviously, Charlottesville got the press because of the white supremacist terrorist attack that killed Heather Heyer. But for that, you get a little press. It went for days because of this terrorist attack. What I was remarkable, I was just in Charlottesville right before the anniversary covering something, and I saw the statute. Now it's up there, the Robert E. Lee one. You interviewed some people defending the statutes, and one guy said something that so outraged me. He said, there are veterans, and that's why the statute's here. They're not our veterans. They were veterans of a war of people who took up arms against the United States of America, formed their own currency, had their own president, and killed citizens of the United States of America. They're not our veterans, but this is their mentality. This is our veterans. So I'd love to contextualize it putting a sign up, traitor to America, but they won't let me do that because that's how I view the Confederacy. They were traitors to America. Again, how do I find common ground with those guys who are defending that statue?
I don't think you'd get along well with that guy. But there was another
guy. I'm a nice guy. I can have a conversation with people.
There was another guy who brought his son to see the statue who said, there are homeless people in this park. Look at all the homeless veterans in this park. And we don't do anything to help them. All of our money is being fought in the courts about this stupid statue, when that money that they're spending, that our public conversation should be about how do we house all these homeless drug addicts in this park instead of worrying about some statue that nobody even looks at. That park is like only used as a shelter for homeless drug addicts, veterans that deserve to be taken care of.
And that was a great point. And that's when you can find common ground, when people say, let's keep our outrage focused on what really matters, and people in need who are sleeping out here and sleeping in the shelter across the street from there, because I was at the shelter across the street from there right before the anniversary of Charlottesville to cover something. So you went down to the South, you talked to people of faith who had suffered great loss in the horrible shooting in Texas. And here's the weird thing. Here's, as a liberal, some of my liberal friends might peel away. I'm a person of faith. I think faith is really good for certain people. I just don't like faith being the basis for any of our laws. I'm really against that. I imagine some liberals might watch, not the women saying I'm voting for Roy Moore, but the man who lost 8 or 9 of his family and saying that they're in a better place and didn't want to talk about gun safety laws. As a liberal of faith, I was fine with that. That's the way he's dealing with this horrible loss. I mean, when you heard him talk about that, you seemed a little like, but you're okay with it? And he said, yeah. Why were you kind of like, I can't believe this?
Well, I was raised in the Catholic Church.
Right.
I'm a good Catholic girl. And still, I think if 8 members of my family were killed, that would make me lose my faith. But it strengthened their faith.
Right.
I would think that something as terrible as losing 8 members of your family would destroy all faith you had in any kind of religion. Instead, the people I talked to went the complete opposite direction. They're like, God willed for this to happen. They're in heaven. This is a good thing. Really? Okay. And I like that you said 8 or 9 because 8, but 9 because there was a fetus. Exactly. So that was the 9th. Mm-hmm. I noticed that you made that decision. Like you were like, I don't know if it's 8 or if it's 9 because of that fetus. You know,
you have to watch outside the bubble to see that discussion with the man. And I respect.
Do I pay you $1 every time you have to say you have to watch outside the bubble?
No, because I really think people should watch it. I think it's real. If it wasn't really good, I'd be like, I'm glad to have Alexandra Pelosi here, but I'm not going to.
But you know what's hard to do what I do is because
you're
not going to get. Tell
us, Alex.
Because it's hard to say to my liberal friends, and let's face it, like my best friend started the Dear Ivanka movement. She's like, we're going to protest Ivanka. Here we go. Like that. I only have like this liberal, foundation to like people to bounce. I got an idea. Let me bounce this past you. It's like liberal. Okay. But, so I say that, it's hard because they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear, you didn't want to hear it. You just said you don't want to hear the guy saying that the soldiers that were in the Civil War are.
I can hear, but I'm aggravated to no end by that because they made up their own fiction. They have a fiction in their head.
Hey, watch these Trump supporters. It's a hard sell to make you watch it. And if you do, you're going to say, what a bunch of rednecks.
I hope people don't see that. I hope they don't. At the end, you sort of have the moment there's a band playing, and it's almost like it feels like a kumbaya moment. Let's see if we can find common ground. I talked to some Trump supporters in different contexts. There is common ground on certain fundamental issues, and maybe we can find, that's where we can move forward. And again, it's big money in politics. Some want term limits. Some even want health care for all now. They're starting to come across on that. But other issues...
That's just because they want to get reelected, so they start saying
I don't mean the politicians. I mean rank and file. I don't talk to I talk to rank and file people who I chat with.
The evangelicals are good on the environment.
I don't know what they're
doing. And they are. They have been. I mean, like sort of, and P.S., I guess you're not allowed to say the evangelicals. It's like saying the women or the women of the South.
You can say that.
Everything has to be so micro. So the women I talk to, I have to be very careful with everything I say because every word you say can and will be used against you, right? So you have to say, the women I talk to in the laundromat in Gadsden, Alabama, because heaven forbid you're speaking for Republican women who voted for Trump. Nope, you're not speaking for Republican women. You're speaking to these people because anecdotes are not data. So
True.
This is the problem with talking to people, going places. Look, I get in my car, I go down to these places, I film people with my handheld camera, and I call that a documentary.
And you did.
I think that's authentic, as opposed to like, Barbara Walters parachutes in with her big lights and her, here I come, right? That's not real to me. What's real is a handheld camera in someone's face in the laundromat. But you have to be careful that that guy doesn't speak for all Trump supporters in Alabama. And then you get in trouble when you say that I talked to Trump supporters in Alabama. Well, you didn't talk to me, so therefore, so you have to, everything you have to say, I'm just trying to give you some, this is like free advice.
I think this is great. I'm just wrapping up because we're going along on time here. Because I really enjoyed talking to you. But I think if people watch your documentary, and I hope they do, it's HBO Monday, October 29th, Outside the Bubble, that they do it with an open mind, even fellow progressives. Because your goal was not to go down there to change minds, or to you did challenge some in a polite way. But you weren't there to go like, you're so outraged, how could you think like that? It was to show us who they are. And I think of all of them, the people from West Virginia were the ones where I'm like, this is interesting that we completely miss as progressives what coal mining is about. The same way when Donald Trump saves 100 jobs at a factory and progressives go, it's only 100 jobs. You don't get it. To other people who work in those line of industry, to them, Donald Trump's standing up for all of them. And we don't get that sometimes. And I think the West Virginia one was the best to understand a little bit more. You don't have to give up your values. Just understand where they're coming from on that. And if Democrats, don't be as dismissive. And actually speak to the people and be respectful of their concerns. And maybe you'll get some of them to support us on certain key issues.
But it is clear that all of the issues come down, in theory, to either like, I need a job, I need to feed my family, or the Bible. And you'll never win. Like Kavanaugh, you can't understand, or Roy Moore. How could someone vote for a sexual predator? How could someone support this guy? Look, they got the Supreme Court. That's what they want. It's about getting their guy on the Supreme Court. And now they've got it stacked in their favor, and that's all that matters to them. They'll overlook everything. Donald Trump, they hear those tapes of Donald Trump, and he's the family man. He's the good Christian. Donald Trump is the great Christian. After everything you heard with, like,
grabbing women, lying, paying off women.
Paying off a prostitute, porn star. But he's a good Christian man because he got them their guy on the Supreme Court. And all that matters in the end is they got their guy on the Supreme Court.
And what does it lead to? Christian Sharia law, which we'll talk about another day, which I've written about many times and aggravates people on the right. Alexandra, it was great meeting you. I hope people check out the documentary Outside the Bubble this Monday on HBO. It is intriguing, interesting, infuriating at times, but I think it's must-watch television. Very nice meeting you.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for tuning in to Salon TV. I'm Dean Obeidallah.